to Dr. Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. You know, unfortunately, in my past life as a trauma surgeon, I saw the effects of the casualties from bike taxis. So this is something that has been dear to me. And on further interrogation of why we couldn't find a solution to get kids and adults, and a member from St. James is correct. Sometimes you do have hero. You do have 6 people coming to hospital after a 2-bike collision. But what we found out was that in many instances, the reason why people are using the bike taxis is because the roads cannot allow for cars or buses to go into those areas. Now, how can you, even if you're getting smaller buses, how can you solve for that issue with the bike taxis where it is the state of the roads why the people are forced to use bike taxis?
I think you're asking a reasonable question, but this is a multi-pronged approach in government. So it's not only the Ministry of Energy and Transport. We will have to do some consultation with the National Works Agency, looking at their network. And based on my former, where I'm coming from, I know that consultations are currently happening now as to the amount of roads we have per kilometer. And that is something that has to be taken greatly into consideration, not with the Ministry of Transport alone. It has to be a cross-sector with ministries and how we move forward. So that question I could not answer immediately here. But if you want us to get a response as what will be done for schools that are located in communities that have no access via car or buses, and we can see, even we will have to do some consultation with the Ministry of Education. Will these schools remain? What will be the course going forward?
Okay. I understand.
And additionally, I want to point out, to cut you, member, but that, you know, the Ministry of Education gives the route, provides the route to the JUTC.
That actually segues into my next question. What is the methodology for selecting routes? Do you have geospatial data? Are you taking into consideration migratory patterns? Is it a minimum number of students in a particular community where you would choose a route? And do you have pickup points or drop-off points where they would still have to take bike taxis or other private means of transportation when they're still taking these buses? Tell me about the routes.
The Ministry of Education provide the routes, and I can come back with further clarification as how the routes were chosen. But just based on my limited knowledge, I would think that accessibility is one. The amount of students that will be traversing the route could be a possible reason why they would have chosen the routes that they chose. There may be additional requirements. I could get that for you as to how the routes were chosen.
I think in my final question, Mr. Chair, I think that in your operations, you ought to have a dynamic assessment of the routes. We see where you can speak to the absolute number of children being transported, but are you solving a problem whereby you're taking the kids out of these unsafe vehicles? Or is it that they're using unsafe vehicles to get to a particular meetup point, and then they're counted in your numbers as being, rescued? So these are pertinent questions I believe that you should have, not just the Ministry of Education, but some other data points to see where your routes are and if it is sustainable, for one, and are you achieving your goals? Thanks.
Mr. Ellington, I think you could answer here because I think
respond to Member Dawes' question. The routes are determined through a process carried out in conjunction between the Ministry of Education and the JUTC's Service Planning Department. and it takes into consideration the road conditions, number of schools distributed along certain routes, designated pickup points, designated drop-off points, and the scheduling to ensure that students from the farthest points can be picked up and can arrive at school in time for the start of school, and vice versa. There will be some areas where the buses cannot go because of road conditions, and in those circumstances, children may have to disembark bus and find another means of transport home, whether they walk home or they are picked up by parents, or unfortunately resort to some other modality which was mentioned before. But as the roads are improved, and I must point out that one of the things that we did during what we called a route survey, after the routes were given to us, we did a route survey with all different sizes of buses, and that is how we determined that some buses could possibly operate on certain routes. We also made recommendation through our ministry to the ministry with responsibility for roads to repair some roadways, do debushing, patch potholes, and in all of that, we have come up with situations where routes that previously didn't have buses operating on them now have buses operating with due care, obviously, but there are certainly some other areas where the buses just cannot go. In the next tranche of buses that we intend to buy, there will be some buses that are much smaller than even the smallest one now in the fleet, and hopefully it can take children along those routes. Thank you, sir.
It's now Mr. Williams.
Member Dawes.
Congratulations on your elevation, Chairman. Question to anyone, do you know about chicken buses? Chicken buses.
No.
So in Guatemala, they have these, what they call chicken buses, which are essentially the same used 10 to 15-year-old school buses. And they've made some modifications to them. And two of the key modifications outside of the colors and shortening of the overhang are that they change the transmission and they change the engine to give more power. Now, the terrain of Guatemala, especially where they're going to Atitla and all of these places, they traverse similar terrain as East Rural and other mountainous constituencies. They have found that what goes very quickly, the transmission, and then the engines struggle when they're going uphill. So they move to manual transmission. Have you taken into consideration the fact that these buses were built for flat cities in the US, and that you may have to learn from the Guatemalans that transmission failures will be a significant part of your maintenance bill as time goes by?
Thank you, sir. Among the lessons we have learned is that the buses are best suited for horizontal plains, straight roads where they do not have to do much cornering or hill climbs. And so what we have done in terms of how we deploy them is to keep the longer buses on the plains and the smaller buses in the hilly terrains. As a general rule, the JUTC does not include manual transmission in its fleet. We go for all automatic buses. So we're not contemplating in the short or medium term any changing out of the transmission system of the buses. What we will do is to deploy them in areas that they are best suited for. And that is why in the specifications that we have put forward for the next tranche of buses, we have made certain recommendations in terms of engine type, where the engines are mounted, the axle weight, the transmission type, and the cooling system, so that they are more adaptable to our tropical climate, as well as the kind of terrains that the buses will have to maneuver. But I do take your point. I might do some research on the chicken bus myself to see what they, apart from how they perform, how they look. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Member Holness, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, it was very difficult to listen and get an appreciation of where the question was going in terms of a comparison of the total cost of the used bus versus any information we have in respect of what would be the cost of a new bus for the school bus system. Are we in a position to say, after we have looked at all the costs, what is the average cost for the used bus? And do we have any idea what the average cost would be for a new bus with the specification we require? That's number one. And I was trying to split service and maintenance in my head for a reason. Service is always going to be required for both the new buses, that regular service schedule. I don't want to call it maintenance for a reason. So I would want to treat maintenance more as parts replacement instead of just the changing of oil and filters and stuff. So the old buses, the used buses that came in, I believe you have service and maintenance as a part of the contract for the entire duration. Was there a breakout between the two? And based on your response, Mr. Ellington, it seemed to me you didn't have much in terms of real maintenance work. It was just the regular service. Last but not least, what is the life expectancy of the used buses? And what would be the estimated life expectancy of the new buses?
Thank you for that question. I will answer the cost as it relates to the life expectancy. I'll let the managing director answer the cost on that. So for the used buses, it is averaging roughly about 12.5 to 12.7 per bus. And for the new buses, you're seeing an average of 21.3 million for the new buses. Over to you, Mr. Ellington, about the life expectancy of the buses.
It's ready? Okay.